Welcome, everyone. This is so exciting that we can take a bit of our afternoon to learn from these amazing researchers that we have joining us today. So we have a series of questions that we're going to go through and hopefully learn from your insights during your time in your research position, but mostly how you got to that opportunity so that we can all learn from it. So I'd like to start with our first question. If we can all share your name, where your last or most recent research position was, what discipline it was in, what college, who you worked with, and whether it was full-time or part-time. So just looking at my screen, Alice, would you like to go first?
Yeah, hi Vaidehi, hi everyone. So my name is Alice. I'm currently in my third year. The last research thing that I did was this summer for Dr. Janine Lair, who is a professor in the psychology department. And I should clarify that there's like two different streams of psychology too, and the research that they do is quite different. So there's the clinical end of psychology, and then there's the more like cognition and neuroscience. So my research was looking at alpha oscillations and how that relates to music and people working together in the brain in CGNS. Was there another thing I was supposed to answer?
I think you got through all of it.
Okay, cool.
Great, thanks. Welcome. Brianne, would you like to come and share?
Hi, I'm Brianne. I'm in my fourth year of a double honors in biology and French. I'm doing research right now on the genetics of addiction, but over the summer I worked for Agriculture Canada in plant pathology. Is that all of them? I'm not sure.
That is, yeah. Great. Katherine.
Hello, everyone. My name's Katherine. I actually don't go to the U of S. I go to Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario, but I'm from Saskatoon, and so for the past 2 summers, I did do research at the U of S with the Department of Plant Sciences with Dr. Jonathan Bennett, and we are kind of studying microbial interactions and how that impacts plant growth and plant functional traits. And I'm also in my third year.
Great, welcome. Maddie?
Hi everyone, my name is Maddie. I just graduated with a biochemistry degree and I'm now in my first year of pharmacy. This past summer and the past year, I worked for Dr. Ron Geyer in the College of Medicine in the Department of Pathology and Lab Medicine. It was a full-time position and I researched, we took little immune cells and we added, this is my antibody, we added antibody to them and then they go and target cancer cells.
Fascinating. Love the hand gestures. Natasha.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Natasha. So this past summer, I worked with the College of Mechanical Engineering with Dr. Emily McWalter. It was a full-time position, and our project was on quantitative MRI techniques and kind of using them to understand the knee joint and osteoarthritis.
All right. And then our last panelist is Jessica. Is the microphone working if the video isn't, Jessica?
Jess, what we might do is we'll let you figure that out on the back end, and then once we get it figured out, we'll pull you into the discussion. How's that sound? I can sort of say Jessica Mccloud Mitchell was a MentorStep intern this past summer. She's in geology, and she actually won 3rd place in our summer research symposium. So against 75 other students. So some really, really fascinating work. I know one of the judges said that they hated geology when they took it in university, and then they saw Jess's presentation and really learned a lot and enjoyed it. So definitely science communication, definitely a good skill that Jess has. So once we can bring her in, that'll be great.
Cool. We'll look forward to that. Well, welcome to the panel, everyone. This is such a diverse set of sciences and engineering and technology, which is great. So we want to start talking about how did you apply for your position, and tell us about the process of acquiring it. What route did you take, and how did you go about doing that? So let's start with Natasha.
All right. So over the November break last year, I just went on the mechanical engineering faculty website, and it lists all the professors and their research areas. And so I went through and found the professors whose research areas interested me the most. And I just sent them a short email introducing myself and just expressing my interest in summer research. And so Dr. McWalter replied, and we set up an interview like the following week, I believe. And so it was different from any interview I'd had, just because she had me ask her a lot of questions rather than her just asking me questions. And so the meeting went really well, and she ended up connecting me with former research assistants. And so it was really nice to be able to contact them and just ask them questions to make sure that her research was something that I was really interested in. And so I just confirmed with her in January that I was interested and took the position. So it was pretty relaxed and not a super intense process, but it went pretty well.
Great, thanks. Maddie, what about you? How did that process look?
So for my last job, it was actually just a continuation of my 4th year project, but the previous 2 summers I had worked in 2 different labs. And how I got those jobs was I pretty much went through the faculty list. Like, I knew I was interested in pharmaceutical sciences, so I went to the College of Pharmacy and Nutrition, just went through the faculty list, started clicking on professors and just seeing what they were researching. So once I found the professor that I wanted to work with, I just looked into some of his previous papers, sent him an email saying I was interested in this position, maybe we could apply for an NSERC award. Yeah, we had an interview, talked about what that summer research might look like, and then just went from there.
Great, Katherine.
Yeah, perfect. So I guess for me, so because I wasn't in Saskatoon, I had my entire application process and interview was conducted remotely, which I'd imagine would be similar to everyone else here who is interested in applying for this upcoming summer or school year. So essentially, when I figured out that I was going to be, I want to come back to Saskatoon for the summer because I want to see my friends and everything and my family, I started, similar to Natasha and Maddie, looking at profs who were doing research that was kind of what I'd be interested in. So I'm actually in biochemistry, so plant science isn't like strictly related, but as kind of like a little tangent on why I was super interested in Dr. Bennett's research is because I remember in grade 12, my grade 12 science teacher or biology teacher gave us an assignment where we had to listen to a podcast, and the one that we listened to was kind of talking about the importance of how fungi help facilitate symbiotic relationships with plants and help them grow and actually help them communicate. And so I just found that super fascinating, and I wanted to learn more about it. And it's actually something that we as a scientific community don't actually know too much about. And so that was exactly what the supervisor I was working for was researching. So I reached out to him. I actually did mention in my email about the podcast that I listened to, and that's kind of what led me to coming into contact with them. So I definitely think some sort of level of personalization to why you would really want to work for them is really good to see, at least from the prof's end. And then so yeah, similarly, I reached out to them via email. He got back and we had a virtual interview, and I think it was over Skype, but probably you guys will likely be over Zoom or WebEx or something like that. But at that time, before everything started, it was Skype. So I had an interview over Skype, and then he got back to me probably within 2 weeks, and then I confirmed, and then yeah, and then so I worked with him for the last 2 summers actually.
Great, thanks for sharing that. Brianne, what about you?
So I got 2 kind of researchy jobs over the summer. I ended up taking the Egg Canada one, but the first one was through the Department of Biology with Ken Wilson on like algae metabolism or something. I kind of went with I really like the prof over like liking what they study, because he's really nice, and I thought that would be a cool thing to learn more about plants and stuff. But yeah, so I just heard that he was hiring a student for the summer, and before he even put the ad up, I like emailed him that I heard about it, and then I talked to him about it. But by the time he got back to me, I'd already taken the Egg Canada jobs. And the Egg Canada one, I don't know if you also applied for like the computer science scholarship. I applied for it, but I didn't get it, which is no shock because I'm a biology student, but I applied anyway. I got like an honorable mention. They emailed me and said the government was looking for people. So I applied for a summer program called FSWEP, which is Federal Student Work Experience Program. And what you do is you upload like one resume and it just shoots it out into the world in the areas that you're interested in, and then people contact you. So you do a lot of the times, like the interview I did, it was like 5 different labs all interview you at one time, which is a little daunting, but it was fine. And yeah, I would recommend applying that way, because then you just have to upload one resume and people can email you if they're interested, instead of having to send out 50 resumes to a whole bunch of people. And it pays really well, so I would also recommend it for that.
Great. And just so we have that website for those that want to look into it, what's its name again?
I'll type it in the chat. I'd recommend doing it, I think I did over February break, and then they start looking for people in February, March.
Thanks so much for sharing that. What about you, Alice?
Hi. So I think that it's all great that there's so many people here who are invested in learning more about undergraduate research, because I actually had no idea what I was getting myself into when I did my first summer job. So I got into it almost like coincidentally. I was literally at a symphony concert, and my prof, who does a lot of research on music and its effects on the brain, was presenting something there. And I kind of just went up to her and I met her, and she was like, "Why don't you come for an interview? You can work my lab." And I was like, "Sure." And then she was like, "I need your transcripts and you need to fill out this form." I was like, "Okay." And then the next thing I knew, I had this research job, which, now that I think of it, I should have probably done more research into the research job that I was going to do, so I would be more prepared for like how to act professionally, what to expect, etc. So that was my first year, kind of coincidentally. But speaking from my second year experience, I actually tried applying to different universities this time, because even though my prof does this one like area of research, it was super interesting. I wanted to see some different facets of music and cognition. So I actually sent out an email to Dr. Isabel Peretz, who works at UDM. And there's a huge brain and music interaction lab there. And I pretty much sent out an email to her. She was like, "Yes, I'd love to apply for you on your behalf." So what most of you guys, I think, would be applying for is something called the UNSERC USurge, which is the Undergraduate Summer Research something. But pretty much it provides a stipend for the prof, so that they only have to top it up a certain amount and they wouldn't have to pay you out of their pockets. So that's why most profs would be more willing to take you on if you had that grant underneath your name, so that you don't have to put as much resources forward. And you can actually apply to many different universities regardless of which university you're at. So I applied to UDM, not under Dr. Peretz, because I didn't send in my transcript in time, because I had to like request it. But then I contacted someone else after I got my transcript. So his name was Dr. Simone Della Bella. He's Italian and French, so I might have butchered that a bit. And we applied, and I got rejected there, but it was also because I had no French proficiency, and it was at the University of Montreal, and I was like learning my French for that. But our lesson is send in your transcript when you send that email. And it also helps if the email is just a bit more personalized, if they're kind of giants in their field and you're like this undergraduate student not from their university at all. Yeah, that's my advice.
Great, thanks. And Jessica, it looks like we have stuff sorted out on your end. So if you want to answer the question, but also tell us a bit about yourself, that would be great.
Hi, can you hear me now? Okay, I'm Jessica Mccloud Mitchell. I did a research position in invertebrate paleontology and geological sciences. I got my research job. In first year geology, I went to Prof's office hours for midterm, and I was talking about what I'm going to do that summer. And she's just like, I know this other prof who you might be interested in working with. You're both Indigenous, so it's a really great mentoring opportunity. So we just went like up a couple flights of stairs and sat down with Dr. Colin Sprout, my supervisor. And it took a few times to work it out. I actually did a mini little thing for 3 weeks, because we didn't have any funding, we didn't have any time, we submitted stuff too late. And then we did it properly this time. I got like USRA and stuff. But no, it took a couple of meetings to find like, well, what can you do? What sort of project can I provide for you? I didn't have any geology experience except for Geology 121. So he's just like, oh, do you know any sedimentology? And I'm like, absolutely not. No, I'm a biology student. And he's like, I can work with biology. You can learn the geology stuff as you go. But no, I just, Joyce Macbeth, she's a social butterfly. A lot of people know her. She's the one who pulled me along, and she's just like, we're going to find you something and we're going to make it work. So, I think that's it for the question.
Great. I think what's amazing is that you all had different routes, but you were very proactive in your approaches. So maybe that's something that we can all take and learn from. The next question we had for you all is, what advice do you have for students as they look for positions, especially if they're starting now and want to work in research, particularly advice in terms of the job search process and how might that look? Let's start with Maddie.
All right. So I've worked in 3 different labs, and so that happened after my 2nd, 3rd, and 4th year. And in 1st year, I was looking like for positions online, and I felt really dumb when I realized that like most positions are not posted. Like I just didn't know that that was a thing. So I guess my advice would be to go and look up what professors you want to work for. You kind of have to like ask for a job. The jobs aren't really like posted. Other advice I would give is to ask early, because lots of scholarships and funding are due in January or February. And lots of people, like upper years, will start asking professors if they can have a summer position in like November, December, January. And I had no idea that was a thing even in 2nd year. So I was a little bit late to the game. Yeah, I guess my other advice would be just go and look up what you're interested in, set up a meeting with that professor. And when you are in that meeting with the professor, make sure you ask a lot of questions. Ask, what do you expect of undergraduate researchers, especially in the summer? Like, what will I be doing day to day? Who will I be working with? Ask lots and lots of questions, because it's so important to have a good supervisor that's going to support your undergraduate work and help develop you as a researcher.
All right. Thanks, Maddie. Brianne, what's your advice?
My advice would be probably to get involved in clubs and stuff. I'm quite active in the biology club, so I kind of know all the profs and whatnot. And even like graduate students, they can help as well. Like if you know the graduate student, it's easier to ask the prof for a job because they'll be there backing you. But probably the main advice I have is that if they're hiring an undergraduate student, they don't expect you to be an expert already. So don't worry too much about that. Like every research thing that I've done and that I will be doing this year, I didn't know that much about. Like I worked with plants and stuff all summer, and I don't know very much about plants. They don't expect you to be an expert. That's why they're hiring an undergrad. They're there to teach you.
That's really valuable advice for the belonging imposter syndrome side of things. Thanks, Brianne. What about you, Katherine? What advice do you have?
Yeah, so the piece of advice I would give is to not be discouraged when you don't hear back from a prof, or when you do hear back and they unfortunately reject you. A lot of times when you don't hear back, it's because they're super, super busy, especially during kind of this period where they have grant applications, maybe they're also teaching courses, and then they also have their own research going on. In addition to, a lot of times, if you do reach out as an undergraduate student and you express your interest in what they do, like to them, that's like a great honor to see like students like you guys being interested in what they do. But and a lot of the times the reason they can't take you on isn't on because of you. It's likely because, for example, like they're not even sure kind of what projects they're going to be able to run over the summer due to like grant limitations or things like that, which obviously would be like pretty difficult to explain over an email. So a lot of times, even if you don't hear back, or if you do hear back and they aren't able to take you on, there's a lot of other circumstances related, and it's not because, like, let's say you're not a good student or anything like that. So I think that's just something that's really important to keep in mind as you start reaching out to profs, and just to not get discouraged, and to just, keep sending out your emails, and then you're definitely going to hear back from someone.
Keep going. We'll take that. Katherine, what about you, Natasha?
Yeah, building on what everyone else has said so far, I think a big reason why I got my job is just because I didn't have many expectations. Like, all I did was go online and read. Once I found Emily, or Dr. McWalter, sorry, I was really interested in her work. And so I had no clue who she was, to be honest. And she obviously didn't know me. I hadn't had a class with her yet. And so I just emailed her, not knowing her, and she was open and got back to me. And so I think it's a really good idea to contact profs you don't know, profs that you haven't had teach you or may never have teach you. And like some other people said here, like emailing profs that are not even in your college or not even at the university you go. Find a supervisor that really fits your needs and does research that you're really interested in.
Great, thanks. Jessica, I'll have you share.
My biggest advice is just to put yourself out there. The worst they can say is no. You're never going to have like a situation where they're going to hate you for approaching them. It's not going to be like, oh, how dare you ask me if you can do work for me. So like, yeah, even if they do say no, like they can't do it this year. That's what happened the first time with Collins me. Like the worst they can do is say no, and like you can come to a compromise. We just shifted the research project to this summer instead of the summer before in 2019. So yeah, I mean, they're like, there's nothing bad that's going to happen by putting yourself out there. So.
All right, and Alice?
I love science Twitter for postings. Very true. Science Twitter is like a thread. I didn't know that it was such a big thing, but Twitter is where it's at for scientists, apparently. Okay, so I made some notes, just because sometimes I forget things. So yeah, Merle, thank you for correcting me. It's definitely the USRA and not USurge, although USurge is like the undergraduate student journal that everyone can submit to, so I'd recommend you submit to that. I don't have personal experience with it, but I've heard that it's a really good thing to get involved with. But USRA is like the summer research assistant thing, is what I meant to say. The other thing that Merle said is, yeah, I've seen students as early as first year get positions. Yeah, so I think if you wanted to get a position in first year, it's totally doable. I will say that retrospectively looking back, since they only demanded my transcript and they asked for my CV, but not really, because they only wanted the like awards that you had gotten, but they had to be academically related awards. So if you like placed in track or other things like music, there wouldn't be a space to put that. I feel like if you have really exceptional grades, then that is probably something that's more that's easier to get as a first year. So when I say exceptional, I don't mean like crazy, like 99s or anything, like probably high 80s, because some of my friends that I told about who are in first year applied this year and they all had grades around high 80s, 90s for sure. So that is one thing for first year students. Your transcripts do matter, for better or worse. The second thing is, yeah, for what Katherine said, is they say no, don't get discouraged. But you can also follow up on them like the second year and ask again, and then they know that you're really interested in their work. The other thing too is if you find a personal connection to their stuff, like with Katherine and her podcast, that really helps. So I emailed definitely a bunch of profs as well, and I think the reason I got back a response back from Dr. Dalabella, who is this giant in the field of music and cognition research is because I did a paper earlier that year examining the effects of rhythm versus music stimulation on gait and Parkinson's, and he coincidentally had a PhD student doing a project related to Parkinson's, and what I did was I actually kind of stalked him professionally on his lab page, and I looked at all the projects that his PhD students are doing. That's really important because more likely or not, the prof will meet you on the first day, shake your hand, be like, nice to meet you, and then just give you to a PhD student, which is completely normal. I was shocked when that happened to me my first year. I was like, what, you don't want to work with me? But no, it's normal that they give you to the PhD student. So if you search up their projects, then yeah, in the email he was like, well, that's awesome because I have a PhD student that is working on what you're interested in. And I really just went out of my way to find it. And then I think I got a response back from Dr. Isabel Peretz because she does many different areas of research, but one of them is about prodigies, the differences in brains of music prodigy. I know the prodigy word is kind of there's discrepancies on whether or not it should be used, but let's just use it here because it's accessible to everyone in this context. And it was interesting because I'm friends with one of the people that she studied. Her name, she plays piano. She is what you would call a prodigy, someone with exceptional music talent. And so is her sister. So she did a sibling study on them. And then I kind of got the introduction through that way and being like, hey, I heard about your research through this person that I personally know that you studied. And I think that helped a lot because I can imagine that if you're the head of this institute that is known worldwide, you probably get a lot of requests. So if you have a personal connection, don't be afraid to flaunt it, show it, be persistent, and then also attach your transcripts because I didn't. And then what is this? Oh yeah, know that the expectation is also a bit different for each university as well. So when you go to a bigger university, there's obviously going to be more students and a larger saturation of students that are gunning for those same exact research positions. So it definitely helps if you show that you've done your research ahead of time, and then if they interview you, go on our website, read the work back and forth, read some of the articles that they've published to show that you're really interested. That's really putting the best foot forward, especially if you're not from their university.
Great, thanks, Alice. I think what I take from all of your pieces of advice is persistence and courage in approaching the people you want to work with, but also in establishing that connection with their work. Which is awesome. So the last set of questions that we have are, what is one thing that you learned as a research assistant or during your time in research that you wouldn't have had the chance to learn in the classroom? So we'll start with Katherine for this one.
Yeah, perfect. So what I would say for this is probably the most important thing I learned through my experience doing research is the importance of asking questions and the importance of how much easier everything gets if you just ask questions when you're confused. Because I remember, for example, when I was in high school or even in university, especially with first year classes, when your classes are so big, I never really took the opportunity to ask prof questions. And honestly, I didn't really go to office hours either, just because I was pretty intimidated. So when I was confused, I think I would try to just reach out to my friends who were in that class, which also is great. And try to reach out to people I knew that way, but I would never kind of directly ask the prof. But in this situation, especially if you're working in a lab and you're kind of doing something you're not as familiar with because it's not directly related to your field, definitely asking questions is really important. And they don't use asking a question as you lack the ability to do this on your own, anything like that. They would rather have you ask and then, not mess it up or whatever, and then have you kind of learn and express that you're confused rather than you trying to figure it out on your own and then have something go wrong. So definitely don't be scared to ask questions. And just because then it's more clear for everyone as well. And then if it's, let's say if you work in a lab group almost, and then it's a question that maybe keeps coming up for almost everyone, then I know that, let's say my supervisor would then, if he notices that kind of everyone's a little bit confused about this one area, then maybe he'll host kind of a brief lab meeting just to go over that topic. So it's also good for them to kind of gauge how well they are at explaining procedures and protocols and what needs to be done. So it's mutually beneficial in that way if you just ask questions.
Thanks. Jessica, what's your What's the thing you?
So I agree with Katherine there that you learn how to not know something, and you learn how to work backwards. You identify gaps in your knowledge, and you're like, well, I know this, but I don't know that. My big thing was like, I know nothing about sedimentology. But no, like you learn how not to know things, and you learn to be okay with that, especially when you start getting like a more mentorship relationship, where like somebody specializes in something, like Colin, he's an invertebrate paleontologist, not too big on geochemistry, even though the department's huge geochemistry right now. So yeah, you just get comfortable with, I'm good at some things, and I'm going to work really hard to be really great at some things. And the rest I'll figure out, and I'll have help figuring out. You start to realize, who's there to help me. So yeah, just learning to be confident with what you know and what you don't know, and how to fix some of that.
Great. And what about you, Alice?
Oh, that's a hard one. I feel like I learned so much through the experience. I agree with everything that everyone else has said. I guess for me, like, being comfortable with being uncomfortable is super cliche, but I feel like that's definitely the biggest takeaway, especially from this summer's worth of research, because obviously everything went remote. So I don't know about everyone else, but I pretty much did a lit review for my entire summer, and my prof gave me a very detailed, excellent Word document that was long, full of articles that I should read and things that I should forward, cite, backward, cite, stuff like that. And I was pretty much on my own. And it was definitely not comfortable at times, and the lack of direction. It wasn't really lack of direction, because that's what they expect from you, I guess. And when you go into research and in grad school, they give you like a document, and then you're kind of on your own. And if you have questions, definitely ask. But it was weird because I was at home on my computer without people around me, and then I had all these articles to read that, and something that was different from what I did the first summer with her. And it was kind of abstract because it was dealing with EEG, alpha oscillations in the brain, a bunch of math and philosophy and psychology coming into one. So I just had to learn to be comfortable with not knowing what was happening, and kind of throwing myself into the deep end and just swimming, and knowing that I'll make it out of the summer, because it was so hard at first. I've never done anything like it. It was like reading every sentence and okay, that makes sense, and then by the time you get to the end of the paragraph, you're like, okay, none of that made sense. So you read it again. So that's my biggest takeaway. What Vedaki said about imposter syndrome, very real research. And you just kind of accept that everyone has it, because sometimes when I ask my prof questions, I think they're dumb questions, and then she's like, oh, you could do a research project on that. I don't think anyone studied it, and that is a viable question. And it's affirmation that they're all human, and everyone's kind of finessing it to a certain degree. So yeah.
Great, thanks. What about you, Natasha?
Okay, first off, I'm just seeing in the chat here, there's a question just about transcripts and getting hired and stuff. And I just wanted to point out that I actually didn't have to give my prof my transcript. And I don't know if that's because she forgot to ask for it or she just didn't require it. I have no idea. But I think it's just really important to make that personal connection with a prof. And good grades are amazing, but your personality and just being able to get along with your coworkers does matter as well. And so, yeah, transcripts are not everything, and mine weren't even needed to get my job. But for one thing that I learned over the summer, so I was working at home all summer because of COVID, and I was just in this room by myself, and my supervisor encouraged me to work independently and kind of discover things on my own. And so whether that was installing a software that I'd never heard of and learning how to use it in 3 days, or she actually gave me a folder just full of thousands of lines of uncommented MATLAB code, and I had to figure out how to run that. And so there's a lot of things like that that just made me become a more independent and confident learner. And so besides improving my MATLAB skills and learning this new software, I really learned how to be more confident and independent. And so I'm a lot less afraid of making mistakes now. I find that in school, you kind of go through that routine of getting an assignment, doing it, getting your mark back, and kind of forgetting about it. But now I really look for that feedback and independently take it upon myself to just become better and learn a lot more on my own. So yeah, I think independence is one thing that I really gained through being a research assistant.
Great. Brianne?
Yeah, it's kind of just like what everyone else has said. I learned to just take kind of whatever opportunities you can get, especially the way I applied, how I could have been working at like a federal park or something, because they don't really tell you what you're applying for until you are in the interview pretty much. So yeah, just take whatever opportunities you can, because no matter what, you can always learn something. Like I learned a lot about how genetics, reading research papers on genetics and stuff. Even though it was plant genetics, it's still helping me with my research right now to be able to understand them. And yeah, that profs are kind of just also looking for people they can get along with. Because I'm the only person they hired, I guess, from the giant interview that I was in. Even though I know nothing about plants, like I took one bio class on them, and I don't know anything about crops. And I said I don't know to almost every question in the interview, and they still hired me because they liked my personality. And my grades aren't that good. I have some horrible grades on my transcript, so even if you have to supply a transcript, it's probably not a big deal if they like you.
That's good to know. So I guess I'll just mark it.
So don't worry so much, and you'll probably do fine.
Thanks. And then Maddie?
Yeah, so kind of building on what Alice said, she said just being comfortable with not being comfortable. And so I guess like in the classroom, like in organic chemistry, they're like, this plus this will make this product. And then you go to the lab and you try that and it doesn't work. Like science fails a lot and they don't tell you that. And not to be negative about it or anything, I loved all my research things, but I got frustrated at times for sure. But I do think it's all about perseverance and pushing through. And then when you do get results, it's like super cool. Like I was doing chemistry on compounds for Parkinson's disease. And I'm like, how cool is that? That like this could be used for like a real world situation. And I think that doing undergraduate research makes a world of difference when you go back to your classes and you're like, I learned so much about this thing. It all makes sense now. Even this summer, I did a lit review and then started pharmacy school semester. I'm like, I know so much about immunology, like even though I just did a lit review, even though I didn't get to be in the lab working with my cells. So yeah, there's just a lot to learn and it definitely helps with all of your classes and all of your life experiences.
Great. Okay. Well, this has been very valuable. I know coming from an undergraduate research point of view, it's so awesome to hear you all share your experiences so honestly and so openly, because that can really help other students. We have many students joining us today. So if anyone has a question, if you want to pop on and open your mic and ask, or in the chat, we'll spend a bit of time answering those.
Katherine just replied to Jonathan. Jonathan's question was around, how do you make that personal connection to a professor? And Katherine, you guys have been, I don't know how you can do it, but you guys can do chats and the live stuff all at the same time. But Katherine said you definitely don't need to have a pre-existing connection with the prof or require connections to get a research position. Like Natasha said, she didn't. And I lost it. She didn't even know her supervisor. You can demonstrate personability by explaining to them why you may be interested in the research, perhaps mentioning an experience or a class that you had that led you to become interested. And the most important aspect is to showcase that you care about what they're researching. Yeah. We had for those of you who haven't had a chance, we did do an interview last week, a roundtable with faculty to say why they hire undergraduate students and what they look for in undergraduate students. So if you haven't had a chance, it's uploaded onto the SURE website. It's on the SURE YouTube channel, and you can access it there. And listen to what the professors had to say. Bennett says, I'm an undergraduate student the later years of my degree. I've always been interested in research, but never really took the time to get into it. Is there a point when it's too late to get involved? Anybody want to take a stab at that one?
I can take it. It depends on what you're doing. Most times it doesn't really matter how late you're getting involved. You can do it essentially right up until you graduate undergrad. If you're trying to get into something like the symposium or publishing, there might be requirements, but I'm not the person to talk to that. Merle and the USURJ and the undergrad journal would be the people to talk to you about that. But usually they don't mind keeping somebody who's like just about to graduate.
I would say also that I don't think you can ever be too late. If you are a little bit more further along in your degree and you're at all interested in graduate work, then definitely getting involved as an undergraduate student and continuing is always a good idea. I should probably have my video on, but it definitely is. There's no such thing as too late. Although you might get recruited, so just be warned on that. Tanatswa says, have any of you guys been able to publish a paper?
I'll jump in and say something on that. So, okay, no, I haven't actually published a paper, but I think it's important to know that when doing research, so at the beginning of the summer, my prof was really excited and I was too, and she said like, oh, by the end of the summer, you'll have a paper going and all this stuff. And by the end of the summer, I did not have a paper going and I didn't even have results. So you realize that it actually takes a lot of time to get research going. And I mean, the good thing about it is I didn't have results, but I actually got rehired for this year. And so I'm working part-time throughout the school year now, and hopefully we'll have some results. And now we're hoping that in the spring I'll get to start writing a paper. So it does take a lot of time, but it's definitely possible. And I'm only in my third year, so I think I'll definitely have a paper done by the time I graduate, hopefully.
Katherine, you said on the chat that you're in your third year and you're co-authoring a manuscript for submission in December. Do you want to talk about that process?
Yeah, I was just going to add on to similar to Natasha. So I think kind of the only reason why I've been able to kind of start writing is because, so I've been working in the same lab for the past 2 summers. So in the summer after my first year, that was when we did like all the data collection. And then so this summer, it kind of worked out well because it was when we did more of the data analysis, and it worked out well for doing stuff online because so the only reason I've been able to do that is because I guess I've been working kind of for the past 2 summers on this project already. So we started kind of, so we had kind of our results compiled, you know, like at the start of summer this year for in May and June. But similar to Natasha, like I remember because I took part in like the undergraduate research competition last summer, and I definitely had no results to present. It was like one bar graph that basically told nothing because the outliers were huge. But anyway, so yeah, so that, I guess, to clarify, when I said I'm co-authoring, that's only because I've been working on the project for 2 years already. So yeah, it definitely takes time.
One of the other questions is, what is the maximum number of undergraduates that professors hire for research? There is no maximum. It's totally dependent on the professor and where they get their funding from. For example, Stephen Rayan in mathematics, he typically hires 8 undergraduate students. He has a massive math lab. So if anybody's a math geek, definitely go talk to Stephen Rayan, especially if you do any coding on the background. Yeah, then he really wants to talk to you. Yeah, so he's one of the top end. Usually a professor, if they have a fairly large lab, they like to ladder their lab. So they like to have 1 or 2 undergraduate students, some master's students, some PhD students, some postdocs, and so it isn't just your relationship with the faculty, it's also your relationship with sort of everyone within that larger research group. And it can be a lab, it can be over in history, it can be, you know, whatever it is. So just thought I'd raise that to your attention. There is no necessarily a maximum. Yeah. Jessica says, I was with Joyce. We had 4 undergrads and 2 master's students at the same time. It's not unusual. We do have a number of professors on campus who particularly like having undergraduate students because it's a specific project. Usually they've got 4 months to do the literature review, collect, analyze, done. So they're usually sort of smaller, more truncated projects. Sometimes they might slice off a part of a project that's a multiple year or multiple people project and give you sort of a particular corner of it. So that happens too. So there's different ways that profs will handle it. There was a question that came in, what sources of funding are used besides the NSERC? That's a really good question, Teha. If you guys don't mind, I'll take a sort of a university level overview on that one. If you're not in, so NSERC stands for Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council. And so they're the only national funding agency. There's three. There's NSERC, there's SSHRC, so Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council. So I'm a historian. So all of the funding that I ever got came through SSHRC. And the third group is CIHR, so the Canadian Institute for Health Research. But of those three, they're called the tri-agencies. The only one that supports undergraduate student hiring specifically is NSERC. And that's how come, so we usually have about 75 NSERC students every year that get NSERC funding. But across the university, we also have, so the Western College of Veterinary Medicine and the College of Medicine both have programs that hire undergraduate students. Someone's not muted, and I don't know who that might be, but if you're not me, if everybody else could mute right now, that'd be great. Thanks. The other thing, and this is sort of that murky reality, is that we have faculty across the U of S who go out and they spend hours and hours and days and weeks typing and submitting these massive research grants. So when they apply for and get their and apply for their research grants, they build into those research grants to hire students, right, from undergraduate students all the way up to postdocs. And so what you're looking for are professors who are holding grants, because it isn't just necessary. Don't limit yourself to thinking about this as a scholarship, because it isn't necessarily. The NSERC is a scholarship, and there's a few others across campus, but the opportunity to get a research position is actually very high, because the U of S has quite a good reputation and quite a high number of research grants on the go. And so pay attention to any time Research Profile and Impact or University News sends out another that says that someone just won $300,000 and someone else just won $1 million for a research grant. Those are the people that you want to be talking to, just to be very practical about it. They're holding research grants. The other group that you want to really think about is any new profs that have come in over the last 2 or 3 years. If you're willing to work with a fairly new prof, they all receive startup funds from the university in order for them to develop their research projects and their research programs. And so these are fairly significant pots of money that incoming professors receive, and they use that money to hire researchers to work with them to develop their sort of their larger research goals. And so these are some of the ones, the people that you can think about and approach. And so you can think about it from the NSERC USRA if you're in that background, but you can also just approach professors directly. Like, for example, my friend Robert Engelbert has a huge SSHRC grant, and he's over in history. So if anyone comes from a history background, he's usually looking, and I know he had a student this summer. So it's, yeah, my professor had a lot of funding, was able to hire 4 undergrads. Yeah, absolutely. So, okay. If you're in any realm of biology, the faculty post positions of the research term on the department page in the undergraduate research tab. I didn't know about this until recently. I wish I'd found it earlier. That's a really important thing. Pay attention to any of the communications coming out from the department level or anything that they might post at the department. Those are really, really good things to watch for. And if you send out those emails to say, you know, I'm interested and, you know, I'm specifically interested in your research, let's say that they don't hire you off the bat. Let's say that they were looking at another student, but let's say that that other student got a job with the federal government to pay, you know, $35 an hour. Well, they're going to go take that job, and then all of a sudden they still have their research, and, you know, they're going to go down their list. So getting yourself known as someone who's able and willing will go a long way as well.
Can I add to that quickly?
What would you like me to add?
Oh,
yeah, you want to add? Oh, go, Alice,
okay.
Go.
Yeah. So I think is NSERC like the only, okay, so I found this confusing at first too, and really explained it, but pretty much what you can think of it as, like, NSERC supports a lot of research things, and if you get the USRA, then it's like USRA is meant for the prof to be used on research assistance, but if they have a grant, they can, like, use it kind of on anything depending on what they like to do. So that's like a good way to think of it, because I was confused at first too. And then I also want to clarify, like, I stressed transcripts a lot because in my experience, like, that was the thing that got me every time. Well, just that one time, but I really regretted it because I really looked up to her work. But it's by no means like the most important thing ever, depending on like what you apply for. So if I contact, profs at the U of S, and so like my most recent research thing that I haven't quite started yet is with Dr. Leila Gold, who is a newer professor, and she studies fMRI with brain surgery, epilepsy, tumor patients. And I wanted to try out fMRI, and she said that she may not have research funding right now, but if I was willing to volunteer, then she'd be happy to take me on. So that's another thing that you could do too. If you're willing to volunteer, then there's not a really good reason for them to turn you down unless they're overwhelmed with undergrads, because it's free labor. So you can always offer to volunteer if money isn't a big thing. And yeah, don't stress about transcripts too much unless you're applying for the USRA, in which case, like most of mine, at least out of province things, they were very cut to the chase. Like as soon as I sent an email, they were like, I need your CV and transcripts. Thanks for your interest. Love to meet you sometime. So there's a few different things there. And it also depends on how big their lab is. Going back to a question before, if they have like a huge lab and they're overflowing with students, then they might not be as concerned to reach out and hire undergrads. Like the more persistent you are, the more they like budge and say, hey, come on, work with me. So yeah.
Persistence shows resilience, and it shows stick-to-itiveness, and it shows all of the things that the profs actually end up looking for. It's like, you keep coming back. Okay, it's kind of like, when you go to the X and you're trying to beat down the Gophers, you keep popping up, they're going to pay attention. So good for that. There was a question around, do professors want official or unofficial transcripts? Official transcripts are expensive. No prof is going to ask you for that. And NSERC, if you're applying for a specific, if you're applying for a position through that federal website, and for a USRA, they look for official transcripts, yes. But just if you're just emailing a prof, then no, then an unofficial transcript is fine. One of the things about your transcript too is that it also contains your co-curricular record and activity, and that's something else to think about. So when you're thinking about transcript, thinking about your whole experience as a student. So I know, like, if you're president of the biology club, like Brianne, or things like that, think about yourself as a whole person. You're not just bringing your marks and your brain, you're bringing the rest of you as well. And so if there's stories or indicators within your life that show your ability to plan your time, to stick to something, even when it's difficult, if there's things like things that you've created or invented, or stuff that you just do on the side, maybe you're a coder on the side, that might not be in the job description, but they might be interested in that. So bring your whole self to an application, if that makes sense at all. Are there any other questions that you guys would like to bring forward?
If I can add to that what you said, for my summer job, even though it had nothing really to do with computers, my boss's son did bioinformatics, and they saw that I took a class on it on my transcript, and that's one reason they hired me, even though I didn't really do anything with computers all summer.
I just thought of something that maybe would be beneficial for everyone to hear, is that maybe something we can kind of try to take advantage of if you're looking for like research opportunities for this upcoming year or summer. The fact that a lot of things are online means that you're not limited to by geographical barriers and reasons. So because of that, I would also encourage everyone to kind of look for programs at other schools. I know for example, there are some schools who do kind of a more like, I don't want to say exclusive, but kind of a more specialized, they have this like research fellowship group. For example, I know the U of T, so more targeting kind of what I'm interested, kind of biochem and things like that. They have a fellowship that's like a medical biophysics fellowship. And what that is, it's every year they look for 50 students, and those students almost kind of like, they do separate projects, but they work together. They have like group discussions and stuff. So that might help if you're looking to feel more kind of like part of a big group. I know Cambridge, in London, they also do kind of like, they have a cancer research fellowship for undergraduate students. So definitely don't feel limited. You can definitely try to look at other schools and what they offer as well, to see if there's a project that really interests you. And yeah.
I'm afraid to get rejected because I applied for a music internship at Harvard and got rejected.
I wanted to add, if I may, on the co-curricular record part. So under SURE, we have every Friday a Science Research and Society Club where we're exploring the connections between science research and society. And a lot of the topics that we talked about today around, the human side of research and the human side of science and imposter syndrome or connections, we do discuss on those Fridays, and they do count for co-curricular. And Meryl can expand on that. But you're all welcome to that Fridays at noon, and we're meeting this Friday. So I hope to see some of you there.
That's awesome. A little bit of a plug in the middle. It's like, okay, Friday noon. Yeah. And we've got we had a great speaker lined up for this Friday, but unfortunately they can't come. So we've got other things planned, but going forward, we'll make sure that we reach out to the entire USask community and yeah, bring your friends. This is good. Natasha says, if anyone has any questions regarding research in College of Engineering, feel free to email me and I can provide some resources. So yeah, that's why when I send out a call and say, okay, who might be interested in coming on this panel? I had 6 of you. I'm like, are you kidding me? That's amazing. And you're also generous with your time, and I'm so appreciative. And then Vaidehi being a researcher herself, she had a research experience this summer, but volunteering to be the coordinator today and asking the questions. The energy that you were all bringing to the table blows me away every week. I have the most fun job on campus. So if anyone has any other questions that we didn't answer today, feel free to email any of the students who were part of the panel, or email me, and I can try and connect you and or answer the question just as the case may be. Also, being part of the SURE Club, I've taken it upon myself to make sure that you students receive those updates so that when things are open or there's a job or someone comes to me and say, I'm looking for a student, I will make sure that I will send all of that out to you. So I become a bit like a spider, being a bit of a connector piece across the university. So that's part of what we're doing as well. And Katherine says, if anyone wants to chat about research potentially out of province, specifically Ontario, or how to approach applications and interviews virtually, that's a really good one. And do we leave our emails, Marla? Does the audience already have them? Actually, everybody here should be on the email that I originally sent out, but I can certainly send, what I'll do is that I'll copy and paste the chat before I stop everything and make sure that I have everybody's emails so that I can send them out. Does that sound okay with everyone? And Vaidehi, if you can just close things off, then that will be great.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for coming today. I know that it's midterm season, so we're all swamped with work, but that you chose to give us a bit of your afternoon means a lot. And thank you especially to our panelists for your answers and insights. It's awesome that we can keep building this undergraduate research community because our work is amazing, but the more we support each other, the better we can all do. So thanks everyone for coming, and I hope we can see each other in future SURE sessions. So with that, I think we're done.